When people ask me about photography, there are usually two questions. The first one is what kind of gear I use, and the second is how do I shoot? You can find the answer to the first question in the video description below, but if you're curious about the second one, stay with me. The thing is, I can't say that I have a default way of shooting. My settings are defined by several factors: the lighting conditions at the moment, the type of the subject I'm photographing, and the creative idea I have. Let me give you some examples. If I'm engaged in relatively slow shooting of single subjects like street portraits, I would usually use Aperture Priority and facial or eye recognition autofocus mode. The reason I use Aperture Priority is because of my main focus in this scenario is the subject, and I want to emphasize them. So my main priority will be the control of the image depth, and that is controlled by adjusting the aperture. And I will decide on the aperture value based on several factors. The first one will be the amount of available light. In poorly lit environment, to compensate for the lack of light, we are often pushed to open the aperture a bit more. The second criteria for my aperture value will be how much context I want to add to the image, beyond my main subject. Sometimes context is good and helps you to set the stage to introduce your subject. In other time, you want to get rid of it because it's too distracting and takes away from the viewer's attention. I can use aperture priority with multiple elements too, but for this kind of shots, I would usually go with higher aperture. And once you start pushing your aperture to the higher values of f11 and further, you would usually need to compensate the lack of light with some other setting. So in this case, I would prefer to take more control over the camera and just work with manual settings. To keep it simple, portraits, environmental portraits, documentary photography, or just slowly moving street or urban photography, all these are comfortably done in aperture priority mode. But we don't always shoot in these conditions. Sometimes we need to prioritize speed. And for these kind of cases, we have the shutter speed priority mode. I would shoot in shutter speed priority mode if I need to photograph fast-paced street photography or faster moving objects. I would set my shutter speed to the desired value and let the rest adjust itself automatically. This method is good for shooting in festivals, crowds, sport events, or everything that requires speed. In terms of focusing settings here, I would use a single point or area autofocus because with multiple objects, it's very easy for the camera to get confused and focus on the wrong thing. So I want to be in control over that. It is a good idea to combine this with tracking autofocus, a setting that will help you stay in focus even if the subject is moving throughout the scene. You can also use shutter speed priority the other way around when you want to slow down your shutter speed. If you're looking to do some panning or blur part of the images in a creative way, you can also use that method. Just this time you will go to the lower shutter speeds of the camera. A big downside of working that way is that the default way the camera tries to compensate for the speed is to mess up with your aperture. So again, it is good in some situations, but not in all of them. With time and experience, you will know when is it the best time to use this method or make some manual adjustments. And probably this is a good time to mention that regardless of the method you are using, aperture or shutter speed priority, it is a good idea to leave your ISO settings on automatic, with maximum limit of ISO 3200 to 6400. That upper limit will make sure that you are not sliding into very high ISO values that can introduce too much noise to your photographs. And of course, you should always use the exposure compensation dial to fine-tune the way that the camera exposes. Now there are more automated methods that you can use, but they all end up deciding on camera setting instead of you. This can be a relief for someone who is just beginning, but sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you want to be fully in control, and then manual settings come into the picture. I would often use full manual or manual with auto ISO when I want to have more control what my camera is doing. The full manual setting will be for situations when I want total control over the exposure. I will use it when I have a stable lighting environment and a clear idea of how much depth I want and how fast I want my shutter speed. And you might ask, why do I say stable light environment? Well, because the biggest problem with manual settings is that at the moment your light changes, you need to readjust it. Now imagine a street where one side of the street is in the shadows and the other side of the street is sunny. The difference in light between one side and the other can be huge, and the settings that you have set for one side will not work on the other. So should we readjust our camera every time we point the camera to a differently lit area? Not necessarily. This is where the manual plus auto ISO combination comes into play. You set your shutter speed, you set your aperture, but you set your ISO settings on automatic and fine-tune the results again with the exposure compensation dial. Now, I've heard a lot of old-timers saying that you should work only in full manual. I kindly disagree with that. If you're not familiar with your camera working in full manual can give you a headache and can be a complete nightmare changing your settings every few seconds. There are many technological solutions in your camera that can take that burden from you, and you should take advantage of them. And if you feel that all of this is a bit overwhelming, you can download a PDF that is part of my street photography toolkit. It has pre-programmed settings for various scenarios that will help you kickstart the process of mastering your exposure. Now we've covered most of the important modes, but all of these settings, all of these semi-automatic exposure modes depend on one fundamental thing, and you have to understand it, and it's light metering. Since the rise of mirrorless cameras several years ago, light metering isn't as critical as it used to be, but it's still very important to understand what are you doing and how your camera measures light. Back in the DSLR days, you couldn't actually see your exposure before taking the shot. You had to trust the light meter, take a photo, and hope it came out right. It was a bit of a guessing game, which you had higher chances to win on based on experience and how well you understand your camera metering system. Today, with mirrorless cameras, we can literally see the exposure live through the electronic viewfinder or through the screen, which makes life much easier. Still, understanding how your camera reads light is very valuable. It helps you predict why the camera is exposing in a certain way and when it might get things wrong. I wonder how many of you actually are using metering system in your daily workflow. Let me know in the comments. So let's try and understand how this light metering thing works. The first thing to understand is that light metering system is not measuring the light as it is, but it is measuring the light reflected from the area you are pointing your camera to. Every camera metering system, regardless of the brand, is designed around the assumption that the average scene in the world, if you take all the light and dark tones, colors, shadows, and blend them all together, will reflect about 80% of the light that hits it. That means your camera assumes that the average brightness in any scene should look like 18% mid-tone gray. This assumption works for most typical scenes, like a city street, a park, or even a portrait. By aiming for that middle ground, the camera maximizes the chances that both the brightest highlights and the deepest shadows will retain detail within the sensor's limits. Common problem with this technology, though, are that the world isn't 80% gray. It might work fine if you don't have too much of a dynamic range inside of the frame, but in a large dynamic range situation, when the light value difference between the darker parts and the brighter parts inside of the framing is very big, these settings might struggle. For example, when you point your camera at something very bright, like a snow mountain, a sunset, or a white wall, the light metering thinks, oh, that is too bright, and tells the camera, we need to darken the exposure to bring it back towards the mid-tone gray. And when you point your camera at something dark or black, it thinks it's too dark, and it tries to brighten it up. The camera is not wrong here, it's just following its programming. Once you understand this, you realize that exposure compensation is basically your way of telling the camera, hey, this scene isn't actually great. It's supposed to be brighter or darker than what you're measuring. And this is the place to adjust your exposure compensation, basically telling the camera what is it that you want it to do in terms of exposure. We will go up on a brighter scene and you will push it down on a darker scene. It might sound counterintuitive, but that's how it works. But now we need to understand where does the camera actually taking the reading from. Most cameras today have 3 or 4 main metering modes. And while names might be different between the camera brands, the logic is more or less universal. The first mode is called matrix or evaluative metering. This mode measures the light across the entire frame and tries to find a balanced exposure. It's great for everyday shooting, landscape, street scenes, or travel moments, where light is evenly spread throughout the whole scene. Sometimes that means your shadows might go darker than you'd like because it's trying to please everyone in the frame equally, or sometimes your bright areas can get a little bit burned, but overall it does pretty good job. The other metering mode is center-weighted metering. This mode gives priority to the middle of your frame. It still considers a little bit of the rest of the scene, but its main priority is to read the light from the middle. It's a classic choice for portraits or situation where your subject is in the center and you prioritize the light conditioning there. The third method is spot metering. This is the most precise metering option out of all. It measures a tiny area of the frame, usually around 2-3%, and ignores everything else. It is perfect when you need total control and exact light metering. On most modern cameras, this small spot can be linked to your autofocus point. On the older models, it would usually be the central one. Some newer cameras offer a highlight weighted metering mode. This one measures your frame, but prioritizes correct exposure in the brightest parts of your image. It's especially useful for high contrast situations, concerts, night markets, or when you want to emphasize the brightest area of the scene. It protects your highlights. It makes sure that your highlights are exposed correctly, and the rest doesn't matter. And even that we moved beyond the days of guesswork, understanding metering is still a very valid skill. It helps you notice when the camera logic doesn't align with your creative idea, and you can quickly readjust it. Because at the end of the day, your camera doesn't know what is important in your frame, you do. Also, it is very important to notice that this metering adjustment will affect your exposure only if you're using one of them in automatic or semi-automatic modes. If you're shooting manual, you will have the suggested exposure displayed to you, but the camera will not adjust the settings by itself. You're the one who need to read the metering and make the exposure decision. If you're still here and interested to explore this topic a little bit into depth, I will send you to a video of mine that explores the exposure topic from a practical point of view and can help you make sense of all that we went through here. Now, how I shoot. Most of the time, I shoot in one of the semi-automatic modes with a strong preference towards manual with auto ISO settings and exposure compensation. The moment that I feel that the camera is causing me problems and doesn't expose the way I want, I'm taking full control and going full manual. And I shoot RAW. It gives me more flexibility in post. I still try to do at most I can in the field in terms of exposure and framing, but if a fix is needed, I want to have the options to do so. But when I use Fujifilm camera, I shoot RAW and JPEG. It's simply impossible to edit the RAW to get the same look out of it. You might be able to do so, but it will take your time, and time is valuable today. Whatever method you decide to try, I recommend adapting it slowly. If you're used to shoot with aperture priority, don't just jump straight away to shoot manual. It will feel extremely difficult. It is important to you to remember that how you shoot is less important than how fast you can shoot, and adjust your settings. If the method you have chosen slows you down and you feel that you are stuck in your camera instead of actually photographing, perhaps it's a good idea to give a try to something else. At the end, there is no better way, just the way that makes you feel more comfortable photographing. I hope it was helpful. I hope you learned something. Have a happy shooting and good day.